Chapter 17. Jeff Tucker's Story. There was another long wait, and then, to her relief, Nancy Drew heard a key turn in the lock, and then a bolt shot back. Quickly, she pushed the closet door open and stepped out into the light. She stood face to face with Jeff Tucker, the colored caretaker employed by the Tophams. The robbers had led her to believe that they had harmed the old fellow, and Nancy was glad to see him well and happy. Albeit a little too happy, for Jeff Tucker plainly had had a bit too much to drink. Jeff still knew very well what was going on about him, but a certain alcoholic glitter in his eyes and his somewhat unsteady stance informed Nancy that he was not just as sober as the proverbial judge. She suspected that while he had been absent on his convivial celebration, the robbers had made off with the Topham furniture, for even in his condition of semi-inebriety, Jeff seemed to realize that something was amiss. He stared at Nancy, then his eyes roved about the topsy-turvy room. "Say, White Guel, you tell me we all dis here furniture's at." Nancy smiled in spite of herself at the old caretaker's bewilderment, for try as he might, he evidently could not rationalize the situation. "The most definite information I can give you," she said, "is that some robbers carted it away. If you had been here attending to your duty, it would never have happened." "That's right. That's right. Blame me. I ain't supposed to be no stand-in army. I's just a plain cold man with a wife and 7 chillin' a dependin' on me. No mom. I ain't havin' no truck with dem machine gun boys." Jeff paused and passed his hand over his forehead as if he were trying to wipe away the alcoholic cobwebs that were accumulating about his perceptive faculties. Then suddenly he pointed a bony finger at Nancy and demanded, "How come you here?" "That's a fine question for you to ask," replied Nancy indulgently. "But I don't mind telling you. I arrived just as the robbers were hauling off the last of the furniture. They locked me in the closet. I must have been there for hours." "You was in dat closet all dat time?" Jeff's voice suddenly took on a pathetic tone. "You page chilly. Suppose you had starved to death in da, or the house had burned down, or you was scared into fits, or... There now, Jeff. Don't take on about what might have happened to me. I'm all right." Nancy determined to try persuasion on the old fellow in order to find out what had happened to him. "Tell me where you were last night," she suggested gently. "Well, miss, it was dis here way. I was out in da yard a corin' around last night and a thinkin' how I wished I was someplace why I wasn't, just any place I didn't mind we. I was just all fed up bein' a caretaker and talking all dis truck from mornin' till night. It ain't such an exitin' life, miss, and while I's done sowed all my wild oats, I still sows a little right now and den." "Yes, Jeff, I can smell that on your breath right now." Jeff wiped the back of his hand over his mouth in an apparent effort to keep his rye-laden breath from being propagated into the atmosphere. "You can't blame me, miss," he protested. "He give it to me." "Who is this he?" "Why, dat white man who drives up into big sedan. He sees me out thar and knows how lonesome and useless I feels, so he says, 'Jeff, hop in. I know a place where.' So and I hops. Course I locked up dis here house and a barn and seen dat everything was safe." "Safe? From the looks of this room one could hardly call it that." "Oh well, miss, it looked safe and I felt safe too when we was off in dat big CH. Den dis white man he says, 'Jeff, how about a little drink?' And I says, 'I don't mind, seein' it's you.' Den I had one and some mo too, I guess, 'cause after while I didn't feel like I was riding in no automobile at all. I thought dat de chariot had done gone and swung low and I was bein' wafted off to someplace in de general direction o' heaven." "Well, that was a fine thing to do, I must say," Nancy commented. "Then what happened?" "I comes to. I sees I ain't in no chariot no mo, but I's in a hotel. And I's in bed and I's feelin' powerfully sickish-like and discouraged. Well, I gets my CLOS on and I sees my keys to de house is done been pilfied. Den I tries to recollect what done come to pass and I get suspicious. I says to myself, 'Jeff, how come dat white man so friendly? How come he give you drinks dat costs $FO a pint? How come you ain't got no keys? Black boy, bestir yourself.' And here I is." "Oh yes, you're here all right," Nancy returned severely. "And a fine mess you've made of it, too. What do you think Mrs. Topham will say when she learns? Jeff rolled his eyes. Lottie, miss. What will she say? I recognized done gone and discharged myself. It would be only what you deserve, Jeff. You were unfaithful to your trust. What you mean, miss, trust? I don't trust nobody, no MO, especially no footloose white boys a-travelin' around in Cedon. You don't understand. I mean, you didn't treat Mrs. Topham right in going off. I reckon you's right, Mississippi old Jeff done gone and made a fool of himself. I realized dat whatever I gets, I's got it a-comin' dot. A tear rolled out on Jeff's black, furrowed old cheek, and he wiped it away with his handkerchief. There, Jeff, Nancy said consolingly. Let's forget about what has been done and think about what we can do to straighten things out. I'll try to help you. We must report the robbery to the police right away. Is there a telephone in the house? No, Mississippi. We ain't got no telephone here. We always uses the RFD. Then we shall have to go to town as quickly as we can in my car. Do you suppose that you would recognize the man who enticed you away, Jeff? Say, would I remember him? I'd recognize dat man in a bootlegger's convention. He was tall and slick-looking, with a kind of a gimme look in his eyes. Yes, Mom. I Sua would know dat baby. Before leading the way to her roadster, Nancy Drew thought of the old Crowley clock again, and all that it might mean in the solving of the mystery of the will. Jeff, as caretaker, would surely know whether or not it was in the bungalow before the robbery. Tell me something, Jeff, she said. Was there an old clock in the house, a tall, square-faced mantel clock? Yes, Mississippi. But all I ever done to it was dust it. I never wound it up to see if it would run. I's got a watch o' my own. Jeff punctuated his remarks by taking a large, silver, open-face watch from his pocket and holding it to his ear. She's done run down too. I reckon dat I was in dat hotel when I should open tendon to dis watch. Never mind the watch, Jeff. You're sure there was a clock in the house then? Oh, I's dead rights on dat, Mississippi Darsua was. I recollects dat clock just as plain as day. I wouldn't forget dat clock. No, Mom, never. Nancy now felt almost certain that this was the clock which contained the notebook telling of what disposal had been made of the Crowley will and that it had been stolen by the robbers. She must recover the clock. And there was only one way. The thieves must be apprehended and the stolen good returned. With this thought in her mind, she rushed out toward her roadster, calling to Jeff to follow. I's a-comin', miss, Jeff called. Just a minute. He half-hobbled off behind the house out of Nancy's sight, while she sat waiting impatiently in her roadster. She started the engine and warmed it up, but Jeff still failed to return. She called to him, but there was no response. Finally, she could stand the suspense no longer. Jumping to the ground, she set off to find out what had become of the old scamp. She found Jeff leisurely performing an elaborate facial ablution at the cistern pump. He would pump his hands full of water and then, with a great spluttering noise, dash it against his face. For goodness' sake, Jeff, said Nancy, provoked, as she came upon him. Don't you realize I've been waiting for you? Those robbers will probably be in the next state before we even succeed in notifying the police. Excuse me, miss, but I's talking a little wash. I see you are. But can't that wait? But dis here wash is impotent. I just wants to get good and sober befo. I goes into dat police station, and dis cold water is good fo what ails me. Coax, wheedle, or threaten, Nancy was unable to hurry Jeff a minute. But at last he had finished, and Nancy, with a sigh of relief, loaded him into the waiting roadster. As she stepped upon the accelerator and the car moved slowly out onto the highway, she wondered where the old Crowley clock was now and whether she would ever be able to recover it from the thieves.